have students coming in sort of throughout the course of this meeting. They are in the process of working on course selection for the next school year after a whole day of school, before that. So, but we're glad to have you. We
I'm
can't wait,
glad to be here. Thank you.
yeah, to just be able to hang out for a little while, ask some questions, that kind of thing, if you're okay with that.
Of course, I'd be honored.
And then at the end, we have a little thing that we do that just kind of rallies the school together. It's our little family thing that we do. So if you'd be willing to join that, it takes 30 seconds.
Of
That would be
course. Of course.
awesome. And Mr.
So,
Coleman, you want to get started? Thank you so much,
yes,
sir. All right.
yes. So, joining us today is a very, 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 very special guest. This young lady captured the hearts of America some 35 years ago, playing the role of Samantha Maselli on ABC's Who's the Boss. 35 years ago is shocking because she doesn't look a day over 25 years old right now.
At all.
This
That's good.
at all.
That is
This
good. Thank you.
this young lady has gone on to become America's favorite witch, Phoebe Halliwell, on the hit WB drama Charm. This special young lady, in sports terms, is a first ballot Hall of Fame actress, author, producer, political activist, business entrepreneur. She is also a legend on the runway through her Touched by Alyssa sports apparel empire. Let's give a warm South Side of Chicago welcome to a living legend, the real life version of Wonder Woman, and today's honorary teacher for the day award. Here we go, right here.
Yay. Thank you. Thank you so much. I will hang it proudly in my office.
To
So
the
you'll have to send
great
it to
to
me.
the greatest actress and fashionista in the proud 387-year legacy of Brooklyn, New York, the iconic Alyssa Milano.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Mr. Coleman. And Miss Brown. I'm so happy to be with all of you today and to maybe answer some questions that you might have. But why don't I start just by telling you a little bit about myself and how I got to this place where I am now. Um, so when I was a little girl, I loved to sing and dance. And hold on, I think my little girl is knocking on the door. Yeah. I loved to sing and dance, and I was a very shy kid and very kind of introverted. And I was dyslexic, so I had learning differences. So school was kind of hard for me, like to be in a classroom environment. But I grew up in a really, really creative household. My dad was a musician. My mom was a fashion designer at the time, so I get that fashion thing is in my blood. And when I was 6 years old, I had this babysitter who was a dancer on Broadway, and she took me up for an open Annie audition for the play Annie that she was going to audition for. And when I was there, she looked at me and I was looking on the stage. I was 6. And I didn't really know what they were doing, but they were singing and dancing. And so I knew that that was something that I could do. And so I told her that I wanted to go play with the kids on stage, not realizing that that meant that I was going to audition for the play. And 1,500 kids were there, and 4 were picked out of the 1,500, and I was one of the 4. And then came the tricky part of having to go home and tell my parents that this is something that I wanted to do because they weren't there. I was with a babysitter. And they fought me for a while, and I locked myself in my room. And they said, okay. And so that's what started my acting career. I was 7 when I went on the road with Annie. We traveled for 18 months. And then when I was 10, I was still living in New York at the time, still kind of acting, doing a lot of theater, but I had gone up for an audition for a TV show called You're the Boss, which is what Who's the Boss was called originally. It was called You're the Boss, and and it was, to me, really cool because the cute guy from Taxi was on that show, and so I was auditioning to play his daughter. Taxi was a show that was on many years ago, and he was the cute guy on the show. So when I was 10 years old, I got Who's the Boss, and we had to move out to Los Angeles, and it was, it was a hard transition for sure, but also very weird being a child that worked like normal adult hours. And I was tutored on the set, which I actually think helped me a lot with my dyslexia because we were able to move at my own pace. And the show became a top 10 hit, and at that time that meant we had, it wasn't like now where there's so many different options to watch entertainment. There was really only 3 stations. Fox wasn't even around. So in those 3 stations, people would get, if they were a top 10 show, they'd get like 30 million viewers, which was crazy. So I became very recognizable to people, and that was always really awkward to me. Like it never made sense. And then I got a phone call one day from Elton John, who is a very famous singer, if you don't know. And it was a really weird phone call because I had never met him before. He just kind of blind called our family, and this was before cell phones, so it was literally like the house line rang, and it was
A landline.
Yeah. Yeah, the landline, and it was Elton John. And he asked if I would meet his friend Ryan White. And Ryan was a little boy who was HIV positive and had AIDS, and he was kicked out of school because the school board thought that he could give AIDS to other children from casual contact, which is not how you get HIV/AIDS. It's not from just like kissing or shaking hands or anything like that. But at that time, similar to what we're seeing now, there was a lot of controversy and a lot of fear around HIV/AIDS. We're seeing it surround different issues now, but then it was HIV/AIDS. And so I met with him. I met with Ryan, and Ryan and I became really close friends. And he went to court and fought for his right to go back to school, which he won. And he spoke in front of Congress, and he was just like one of my heroes. And he asked me if I would go on TV with him and kiss him to prove that you couldn't get HIV/AIDS from casual contact. And so I went on TV and I kissed Ryan, and together we were able to really change the narrative about that disease, and it was a really big moment in my life, probably one of the most important moments of my life, because for the first time I realized why God gave me this gift of being famous. And for me, that meant that I was going to be able to use whatever fame that I had to make a difference in the world, like I was able to make a difference in Ryan's life. And so I was 15 years old at the time, and I've been an activist really ever since. And even though I like acting, it's super fun, and obviously doing a show like Charmed was a blast because we got to wear crazy wigs and beat up demons and all of that, good versus evil stuff. My acting is important because it enables me to help people throughout the world. And so I'm an ambassador for UNICEF, which basically means I've traveled the world in some really tough places like Angola, Africa. I was there only 2 years after the peace treaty was signed, after the longest civil war in the history of the world. I lived in South Africa for 3 months in 2000, only 9 years after apartheid was abolished. I spent 3 weeks in India, 6 months after the tsunami hit, which devastated all of the coastal towns or villages in India. And I've been to Kosovo as well, which was that trip was focused on child poverty and really witnessed firsthand the incredible segregation that they have to deal with the people from Kosovo and the people from Serbia. And so uh, it's my most important work. I've seen some really, really, really hard, devastating things. Um, but it really is, it's those moments where I allowed myself to feel heartache and sadness that I continually tap back into for inspiration, and to keep going and to keep trying to help people and do my best for mankind. Um, and so I'll leave it there for people. I'm also a political activist, but I try not to talk about politics too much in these types of forums, because I want to be conscious that there are people with all ideologies and beliefs and political affiliations. And so, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about that as well, or anything in general, like feminism or the Constitution or anything in civics or anything like that. I'm a COVID survivor. I had COVID in March and April, and happy to share my experience uh, with that as well.
Absolutely. And I was going to touch upon that. First of all, you were hospitalized. You were in the ICU this past the latter stages of the spring.
Yeah, I wasn't actually in the hospital when I was acutely sick. I was in the hospital as a long hauler because I still have severe shortness of breath. And so I there was a moment when I was sick for 6 weeks, like acutely sick. By the way, I had 2 negative tests. I only found out that it was COVID from my antibody tests, which I don't have anymore, but I had the antibodies. But yeah, when I was acutely sick, there was one night in particular where we had to decide, my husband and I, whether or not I was going to go to the emergency room. And at the time, because it was end of March, they were still putting people on breathing machines at that time. Now they're trying to steer away from
the ventilators.
Because they're realizing it's so hard to get people off. So, but at that time, they were basically sticking people on oxygen, and then if people didn't get better just on oxygen, they were putting them on ventilators. Shows you how far we've come in just the last 8 months. And so I didn't want to go be alone without everybody. So I did everything I possibly could from my house, and just kind of fought through it. But it was definitely scary. I've never been so sick in my life. And now they're finding, because most people don't just get better, right? There's these long lasting symptoms, and symptoms that affect every part of your body. Like they're finding that there's a lot of mental health issues afterwards, with anxiety and depression. And so I don't say this to scare everybody. I just say this as someone who has had the experience of this illness. It is really important that we all take care of each other and take care of ourselves, and wear masks and keep socially distant and wash your hands and do all of those things, because this sickness is truly no joke.
And it's so frustrating to me personally that wearing a mask is so political. Just
Right.
wearing a mask,
Right.
it boggles the mind. But just wearing a mask, we've been in a tug of war about going back to mid March for the past 8 months.
Yeah.
Just wearing a mask.
Right. And the thing about it is it's such a selfish philosophy not to wear a mask, because it's not really about us. It's about keeping the most vulnerable amongst us healthy. And it's super frustrating, because I look at how lucky I was, because I got sick basically the same time that Gavin Newsom, the California governor,
Yeah.
locked down the state. But had I had those 2 negative tests, I probably would have hung out with my parents, or had my mom come over and make me chicken soup or something, and they're in their 70s. So the fact that I couldn't see them really saved their lives. And so all of this, and I understand the need or desire to feel a certain amount of freedom, but these are unprecedented times, and we really have to take care of each other, to the best of our capabilities. And the only way to do that is to wear a mask. I know it's uncomfortable. I know it's inconvenient, but by not wearing a mask, if you're asymptomatic and you, God forbid, gave this to someone else who was vulnerable, of maybe had some underlying conditions or something like that, and that person passed away, I mean, you would feel so horrible. So wearing a mask to me is the least that we can do, and so important. And I think this is a bigger conversation of how we've become so self-consumed and so distant from the community spirit, that community that you might feel in a high school, or where we're all responsible for each other, and we take care of each other, and we take care of each other's health. And I think that technology has really made it so that as little human contact as possible is almost preferred, and so we're very sort of we've lost touch that everyone is connected, and that that to take care of each other is the most important thing we could do as not only community members, but also as just humans.
And touching upon that, we just surpassed 2 unfortunate milestones: over 240,000 COVID-19 deaths in the United States, as well as eclipsing the 10 million mark in positive COVID cases in the United States. How frustrating, just watching the news each and every day and seeing the numbers grow and grow and grow. And when just the political part about wearing a mask and not wearing a mask, and not having the proper tracing mechanism in place way back in March and April, how a lot of the cases, a lot of the deaths could have been prevented. Easily.
Hold on, my daughter just came in crying. What's the matter? What's the matter? What's the matter? Yeah. What's the matter? No, he didn't take you.
Yeah, and he said when I go back, I'm gonna throw away all your toys.
Why do you say that?
because it was crying
When he left?
No, when and he said, I I'm not gonna fight. I'm
Sorry, give me 1 second.
I'm
No,
gonna
take your time.
100% understand.
and Scjr were crying about what I toy.
Well, mommy won't let him do that.
But I want to get a toy.
We're okay. We're just on mute for just a second.
Yeah, we'll be ready. We'll be ready momentarily. Thunderbird Nation.
Yo.
Thunderbirds on 3. 1, 2, 3. Thunderbirds.
Thunderbird. It's go T-Bird, but it's
Go T-Birds. Go T-Birds. My bad. My bad. My bad.
I knew that was gonna happen. My husband took Milo out for a toy because he got hurt, and I was like, "Did you tell Bella?"
Oh,
So that's
wow.
what's happening right now.
Oh, man.
Anyway,
Had a tough day today.
it's
My goodness.
distance learning and working from home and all of that stuff. It's the real deal.
Oh, wow.
So yes, the fact that there has not been a plan, and we are this far deep into this, Mr. Coleman, is really frustrating, because a public health crisis should not be political. It just shouldn't. And you're absolutely right to feel that kind of frustration, especially when the numbers seem to be growing at a rate that we are going to see some really dark days ahead with the flu season, and no plan in place to contain COVID. It's a lot. It's a lot. And it's been a we got to think also not only about the physical implications, but also, like, what is this doing to our young people mentally, or what is it doing to the elderly who can't see their families or their loved ones. And especially when you look at how other countries are really have been able to at least keep the numbers down. It's frustrating. I hear you.
Absolutely. And then, just in observing from afar, um, how like uh, like the like with the COVID-19 pandemic, like I said, with the stats, over 240,000 deaths, and over 10 million positive cases over the past few months. Have you observed how has the COVID-19 pandemic, in your opinion, from a social, racial, health, wealth, educational inequality, how has those elements been exposed on the big stage, throughout the country?
Well, I mean, it's been exposed to an extent that we can't ignore the disproportionate rate that people of color, Black people, Indigenous people have become sort of ignored, and it's heartbreaking, and it's something that we have to fix. And the only good that I can see that has come out of this time is that people can't ignore it anymore, and that it can't get swept under the rug, that we have to come out of this in a better position than we went into this. And part of that means that we really have to examine the inequality and the inequities that face people of color in this country, and the systemic racism, which is a huge part of why the Black community has suffered so much from this illness. I mean, it's catastrophic.
Mhm.
And it's shameful. And I'm very hopeful, though, that things are going to change because more people are aware now. It's like I think about how much we didn't know before even cell phones were around, right? To videotape these atrocious lynchings that we're seeing, and how for generations and generations and generations there have been people that have gotten away with horrible crimes against humanity. And we have to continue to elect people who can recognize this for what it is, and not try to make excuses for it, but that are going to implement real policy change to change how we look at race and racism in this country.
For today's youth, especially the youth that's on the call right now, how important is it how important is serving your community in wake of such social racial injustice and, most importantly, uncertainty?
I mean, it's everything, but I feel like the way in which we think of community needs to constantly evolve and shift because of changing technology. And I feel as though, again, this lack of human to human contact, which is now being even, exasperated even more by the fact that people are distance learning and kids are distance learning. We have to figure out how we can still contribute as a community, even if we are forced to be apart. And what does that look like? Does it look like community Zoom meetings? Does it look like family Zoom dinners? Like, what does it look like? Church on Zooms? Because I think a lot of the heartache that we're feeling right now as a country is this real sense of isolation. At least I am.
Mhm.
This real sense of isolation that can be so jarring, because this is not how we're built. We're not built to be away from each other. We are built to, dance around the fire at night, and commiserate about a
Yeah,
long
yeah,
day.
yeah. Something like this happens once every 100 years, going back to the 1918 Spanish
Mhm.
flu.
Yeah. So what does this look like right now in the middle of this pandemic? And how do we continue to fight injustices in a way that gets everything done, but doesn't put people at risk? And it's a very tricky line to walk, right? And sometimes, like as we saw on Saturday, when there were such joyful celebrations at the announcement of Joe Biden being elected. Sometimes the risk is worth it, right? For that community spirit. Sometimes it is a matter of dancing in the streets and releasing whatever hard or heartache is in your body, and being around other people that are like-minded, that feel the same way, that are dancing in the street right next to you. Or sometimes that looks like a Black Lives Matter protest, where the community comes together to push for change and reconciliation. But those are the big moments. Like, I feel like no one's focusing on just the everyday implications of what this means, to be disconnected or to be connected by technology. And it kind of is like a self-fulfilling prophecy when you think about how, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and TikTok, and the people we follow on these platforms become another form of community. But it's not the same thing, and we shouldn't replace real sense of face-to-face love and community with staring down at a device that doesn't have a heartbeat.
Absolutely. Well, I
I
was
have,
just going. I was just
can
going
I
to ask
jump
you.
in,
Oh,
please?
go ahead.
Please? Okay. So only because my daughter's, she's still in school. She told me to tell you two things, and it's important that I tell you this
Please.
because what you've just talked about is exactly what she and I were talking about last night. She's 9 going on like 40. And so she was talking about missing her friends, feeling isolated, like she doesn't really have friends because she doesn't
Yeah.
get to see them. Um, and they just went from live school back into remote learning, because we've got this uptick. And
Yeah.
so and all of the ways that it's impacting her. And so she's been yelling at me from her classroom, right, to tell you hello and to tell you that she appreciates you saying
Hmm.
what she's been feeling. I mean,
Yeah.
like we spent some hours yesterday with her crying because of the heartache of not being able. She's very community minded, very much
Yeah.
about her friends and her family. And so,
My son too, he's
yeah,
9, same age,
yeah.
and
And
he's
so it's,
having a hard time as well.
yeah, so it was important. I did not mean to interrupt, but she's literally screaming from downstairs, and I was like, "Well, when you're done with school, you can hop on." But she's a little shy for that, but she wanted to know that she can hear what you're saying and that it's resonating because she literally was just
Yeah.
very upset
I'll
about
tell
the
her she is
missing her.
not alone, and what
Yeah.
she's feeling is actually the right that's the right emotion to be feeling right now.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
also the anxiety of living through a pandemic.
And wondering when it will end, which is what she says. When is this over?
And
And
yeah, the whole living through a
yeah,
pandemic thing for our kids, that's got to be, you know, terrifying. And
yeah.
I don't think we're talking enough. Like, I think about all the time, because at the beginning of this, remember they were telling us to wipe down our groceries and all the
Mhm.
counters. Like, I would think, oh my God, when my children are grown, are they going to wipe down the groceries because this was such a monumental time in their lives? Like,
Mhm.
we're not really talking about what the long-term effects on our children will be. And
Mhm.
so it is real important that you have these kinds of spaces, um, to just talk about what you're feeling. And there's 30 people on this, and I want you all to be able to, once this is over, to be able to have these spaces to be able to talk about things, because this is not normal, and this is not going to be normal, but we're not going to go back to normal.
Mm-hmm.
We have to figure out a new normal. And that is what my biggest sort of unknown is throughout all of this, is like, how do we figure out the long-term effects of this, but also like how do we redefine community when we
Mm-hmm.
can't be together, breaking bread.
Absolutely. And figuring out how to heal from this sort of collective trauma
Right.
that is happening. Yeah.
And if you think about young people too, so much of their community is not only about school, but or family, but also about sports teams
Mm-hmm.
or dance class, or you know, whatever it looks like. Um, and so to have none of that, and I think that that's why my son, who is an athlete, he plays on a lot of teams, and so not only has that been taken away from him, but the psychological tool of that exertion, of
Mm-hmm.
that physical release, is also taken away. So it becomes that, psychologically, we all have these crutches, right? That we know, like some people it's food, and it could be a very unhealthy thing. But what, as parents, we try to instill healthy crutches, like working out and playing sports and being a part of a team and all of those things. That when all of that's taken away, I think our young people have, a lot of pent up psychological anxiety that they're not able to exert in their normal ways.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if you go back, I mean, the indigenous and all of the tribes throughout the world, after a hard, long day, what do? They dance around the fire
Mm-hmm.
together as a community, and they chant, and that is a way to get it out of your body, right? And so we don't do that really necessarily anymore, um unless you have dance parties or dance squad or something like that. But our outlet is now sports or working out, and to have that taken away, at a time when we need that crutch so much, I think is really hard on our young people.
What what is a what is a typical day of Alyssa Milano like? You wear so many hats on a daily basis. Not only you're a legendary actress, but you're a producer,
Yeah.
author, political activist, run your own clothing line, Touched by Alyssa.
Yeah.
And on top of that, now you got to put on a teacher hat with the remote learning. So how
Yeah.
what is a typical day like for you?
So my typical day starts at about 6:30 or 7, and we do remote learning with the kids. My husband too, because I'm not very good at math, and the 9-year-old's math is now way above my pay grade. But and then my meetings start at about 11. And my meetings, when I say meetings, I mean Zoom meetings. And what we've tried to do is, and it's working for the most part, is I try to, like, if I have work that needs to be, like, if I need to write, I'm writing 2 books right now. And so if I need to write, then we'll schedule the entire day around that. If I need to tend to the clothing line, then the day will be all about that. Um, and so trying to stay present and in the moment. I don't really believe in balance. I think that finding balance is something that, they sell a lot of books on, but it's not really attainable. So I just try to be present and in the moment and do what's right in front of me to the best of my capability. And like today, after I see you all, I have a meeting with the Biden-Harris campaign to talk about Atlanta and the Senate races that are going on. And then at 1 o'clock, so today is pretty much after this meeting, I have just political stuff. 1 o'clock is record. I have a podcast too. That picture right there is my podcast. So I'm recording 2 podcasts today. One at 1.
How can we tune into your podcast?
Oh, it's available. It's available anywhere you get your podcasts. So either Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or any of them. Spotify, and it's called Sorry Not Sorry. And I basically just have like great unapologetic conversations with people that I admire, that inspire me. And then so that's at 2, and that's my last thing as far as work goes. And then at 3:30, Milo has a dentist appointment to check his teeth, and at 4:30, Bella has a pediatrician appointment because she's been dealing with a little bit of anxiety herself at 6 years old. So yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. But you know, as I find it's all manageable as long as I'm like just stay focused in the moment. If I start to think about tomorrow or get stressed about how much work I have tomorrow, then it's then I get overwhelmed.
We've got like 4 questions in the chat box, and so I'm going to read them to you.
Right.
The first one is from Dr. Jasara Hines. She is our AP coordinator, our AVID coordinator. She does tech stuff for us. She's like a one-stop guru. And so she says, what would you say is the most important thing that you've learned from your travels to all of these countries? And then after you answer that, Javante, I need you to unmute your mic to be ready to ask your question.
So it's a great question. And I think the thing that has been the most surprising about seeing the world the way that I have in some really tough situations is that our problems are not all that different. And what I mean by that is, well, there's a few things. One is the thing that ties everyone together is this innate ability to have hope and to dream about a brighter future. And it didn't matter if I was in Angola or India or where these children, these young people, I feel like innately in their bones want for a better world, and it's up to us to not only create that world but to allow them to have that dream, because dreaming is really important. But also that the issues in it country right now, when you look at what has happened to Flint, Michigan, down that is going on in Angola. It's also going on here. The reuniting children with their parents. It's a different type of situation in Angola because they were children of war, and the war has since been over, and there's no way of reuniting these children with the parents who fought in the war, or if their parents are even still alive. And we're dealing with that here as well. with our inhumane way that we have handled immigration in the last 4 years. So I think that everything is interconnected in such a way that human struggle is human struggle, and we were just really blessed to be born in a country that has democracy and that fights for the marginalized, or should be fighting for the marginalized and the oppression, um, and that we recognize, that we have to keep fighting. There's like Angola is incredibly corrupt, um, but like India, for instance, the wealth gap in India is, I've never seen anything like it in my life. There are these areas where the impoverished live, and then you walk a block and then there's these palaces with, it's the craziest thing, and we're dealing with the wealth gap here as well. So and income inequality. So yeah, but the hope hope is the promise.
And we had a
And then,
student question. Was it Javante?
yeah.
Javante?
Can you unmute your mic, or do you need us to unmute it?
It was my turn.
Yes,
Yep.
Javante.
Your turn, sir.
It wasn't really a question. I just wanted to tell you happy early birthday.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you. Thank you so much, Javante. That means so much to me. Thank you.
Yeah, Javante wanted to say happy
I've never-
25th birthday.
Thank you. Yes.
Right.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, and I never really like met a celebrity before, so this is like crazy.
Aw, we're just normal people. We're just normal people with different kinds of jobs.
Someone wrote in the comments, it's just to that point, it's cool to see famous people in their real lives, and it's good because people forget that they're real people. And he says that he's glad that you're better and still thriving, but it's awesome to just see you and to be able to converse, like he would do with anybody else. So that's
Yeah, of course. And I think it's so, again, so important to share with each other. I think that's super, super important. So I appreciate this opportunity to come and be with all of you. It means just as much to me, especially right now.
And then Sanaya says, how long have you been doing podcasts?
My podcast, we are coming up on 1 million downloads. So it's been almost 2 years. Almost 2 years, and it is so fun. Look, I have my mic right here.
Ooh, that's a mic.
Yeah,
That's
I have my mic
professional right there.
Right.
And then I have this is my little like recorder mixing thing. And so I can mix the mic, and then we do it over Zoom now. Normally I would have people here in my studio. And then I just press record and we get their track over Zoom, and then I have an editor and a producer that sort of mix it all together, and I think you'll really like it. I think it'll be interesting for you all. So he plays the drums and the xylophone and all sorts of percussion instruments. So when you hear music in my podcast, know that it comes from my son.
Oh, wow.
It's really cool, yeah.
Nice. On a lighter note, as you probably know already, You're a huge hit on the fashion runaway stage here in Chicago. As a matter of fact, my high school students have worn Touched by Alyssa apparel, sports apparel from your phenomenal empire that you're running over there. So actually, we just did a recent fashion show, so I'll send you a link with that. What was your inspiration in building Touched by Alyssa? I know AP Brown is a huge sports fan, and we have a lot of ladies on the call that are huge sports fans. So
Yeah, I
I'm gonna
mean,
let you tell it. What was your inspiration in creating
so it's been on the market now for, oh, it's got to be 12 years. And
13 years?
yeah, 13 years. And when I've had Dodgers season tickets for forever. Of course, the year they win the World Series, they're not in LA and I don't have tickets, but that's a whole other conversation. But 13, 14 years ago, I was sitting in the stadium and it was chilly and I went into the stadium shop to try to find something that was warm but still cute, and all they had was pink. These weird pink, like this baby pink, like weird shaped women's clothes that they called women's clothes, but really it was just pink it and shrink it is how I used to refer to it. And so I thought, if women made up 50% of the live audience in a sporting event, then even if 10% of those women were feeling like I was about the pink, then there would be a market for this. And so my idea was to just do a really cool, fashion forward clothing line, so fan apparel basically, so that we would do quality fabrics and silhouettes that were really flattering to women's bodies and not boxy. Um, and so originally I pitched the idea to Major League Baseball, which was the scariest meeting of my entire life. I pitched that idea to a group of dudes who just did not get it. So let this be a lesson for all the ladies that are listening. If you believe in something and you're the market for it, make sure you fight for it. And so MLB gave me the licensing, and that was 13 years ago, and we gave them the exclusive. And then the clothing line was out for a year, and then we had all the other leagues um, in line that wanted to give me the licensing. So I have the licensing for the NFL, NBA, NCAA, NHL,
NHL?
ML, yeah, right, NHL, MLB. Yeah, and we survived this hard period due to the pandemic, just because we run it like a real mom and pop kind of operation. So so yeah, I am very proud of that, and it's super fun because I get to take my kids to sporting events and they think that I'm the cool mom. So
That's amazing. That is amazing.
yeah, it's fun. It's fun. And to see how the industry has grown since, for in the last 13 years, from those pink hoodies that were made out of horrible, not cozy fabric, to now in the market. It's been cool.
And then the last few questions, because I know you have a podcast is shortly. Um, two questions. How many? Well, it's a twofold question. How many ladies did you audition against for the role of Samantha Micelli? And how should for the young folks on the call right now, especially in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, obviously in-person auditions is not possible. How should an aspiring actress go about preparing for auditions? where the auditions are now via Zoom, via this
Mm.
format?
Well, I mean, the way that the entertainment industry was leaning towards anyway, it was leaning in the direction of putting I mean, I can say even before the pandemic, I had put myself on tape for like movies and stuff, meaning recorded myself on the phone, um, more so than meeting in person, because a lot of times during the casting process, the director will be, in Atlanta looking for locations because Atlanta is where they're going to shoot. So but I don't know how many people I was up against for Who's the Boss. I was probably hundreds. Um, but I think that there is probably a really good opportunity to look for some uh, Zoom type of acting auditioning classes, um, because now that everything is over Zoom, you could have an acting teacher from Los Angeles that is able over Zoom to teach you in Illinois or to teach you in New York or wherever. So that's kind of cool. Um, but acting is basically about it's really about connection, right? And listening and reacting. It's maybe more about reacting than it is about acting. So, I mean, if that's the path that you want to take, don't let the pandemic stop you. Look for opportunities to find Zooms that will continue on your training.
And how how important how has the hashtag Me Too movement grown um, from over the past 3 years? Um, Played a huge role, um, arguably the lead role in galvanizing um, the country and the world around the importance of the hashtag Me Too movement. How proud of you pertaining the growth and the progress over the last 3 years?
I mean, first of all, the work that Tarana Burke is doing right now is amazing. And if I have to figure out what the website is. I think it's called Me Too Act 2. And what Tarana has done, hold on, is she's created a database basically for people to um, to be able to look at any sort of way in which they want to help. And so it's act2.me2movement.org. And I would recommend people check it out. And it's basically giving people action items. Things could be as little as reading a book or as big to starting petitions. And it's a way to activate it past just the hashtag. Um, I'm really, really, really proud of how far we've come, but I really, really, really think there's a long way to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I think the next step is really policy changes, which Time's Up is doing a really great job at sort of looking at what those policy changes might be. Things like, corporations not being allowed to force women to sign non-disclosure agreements when they agree to work at a company, so that if there is any sort of sexual harassment or misconduct that they're exposed to their shareholders. Um, Things like that, I think, are super important. Also, the Equal Rights Amendment. I mean, women are not protected in our Constitution, which people are shocked about. And people always say, well, the 14th Amendment covers women. And my answer to that is always like, oh, yeah, then why was it not until the 19th Amendment, which is 5 amendments after the 14th Amendment, that women got the right to vote? The 14th Amendment has been manipulated to include women, but that was not the framers' original intent. So the Equal Rights Amendment is something that Alice Paul wrote in 1920, I think, that we still have not been able to pass, and it would basically give the weight of the Constitution behind this idea that you cannot discriminate based on sex or gender. Yeah, and we're the only industrialized country in the entire world where women do not have protections in our Constitution, which is supposed to be the greatest document on the planet. So that's something that I'm fighting actively for, because I feel like that will set the precedent for legal precedent for so many different ways that women are discriminated against. Things like pregnancy discrimination is a big one. If you're a young woman that is interviewing for a job and you do not yet have children, and you are competing against a man, chances are that they are more likely going to give the job to a man because they won't have to deal with maternity leave. Or a breastfeeding mother who wants breaks every 2 hours to pump. So all of these things are so horrible, and it just keeps women in this place of where we are disproportionately affected. And of course, women of color are even more disproportionately affected than white women. So that's my goal, and I would love for all of you to do a little research on the Equal Rights Amendment. It's really, the history is really incredible. I find the Constitution incredible, but what we have to do to get things amended
Mhm.
is a really interesting process, and would be a good deep dive for your students.
Amen.
Mhm.
We could keep you on here all week long if we could, but I know that you have you getting ready for your upcoming podcast episode right now. Please don't be a stranger. The entire city of Chicago, you're beloved here, especially with the youth, the performing arts community, the civic engagement.
Well, I'd love to give you and all of your students my email address, and people can feel free to email me. I mentor a bunch of young activists. So if there are people in your school, kids in your school, young people in your school that want to work on being community organizers, or want to be politically active and fight for things, I do have a youth group that I work with that I'd love to introduce everyone to. So my email address is Alyssa, ALYSSA, at patriot, not partisan.com.
What was before partisan?
Patriot.
Okay.
Patriot.
AP Brown got it.
Okay.
Thanks, AP.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we're gonna take that down, and our students are going to utilize this wonderful opportunity, because a lot of the students on the call are aspiring to, at the collegiate level, to study civics law, political
Great.
science.
I am so happy to share this community of young activists. They were the people behind Prom at the Polls, which was a campaign that they put together to give young people incentive to go vote, with the idea that young people had so much taken away from them with homecoming and their graduation and their proms, that giving them an excuse to go get dressed up and vote, or even just take a selfie in front of a polling station. So yes, please be in touch, and thank you for this opportunity and this space to speak honestly and openly with young people. You're all the future, and I believe in you, and happy to help.
And thank you so much once again, Miss Honorary Teacher for the Day.
And you're gonna send that to me, right?
Yes, Kelly. I'm gonna call Kelly.
Great.
Hardworking, the hardest working lady behind the scenes in
Yes.
show business, Kelly, and you got a wonderful team. So I'm gonna
Thank you.
get on the call afterwards, and we
Okay,
got a mini
great.
Care Bear package to send you. Definitely.
Yay. Okay.
So, like I said, please don't be a stranger.
Yes,
Like I said, the city of Chicago loves you. Hopefully, you'll be able to join us again before the inauguration. The
yes,
Biden inauguration.
whenever you need me, you call me. I'd love to do this again. This was very special for me.
And
so as our way to end it,
thank you so much. I'm going to pass the baton to AP Brown right quick to close this out. Go ahead, AP.
This is our quick 10-second thing that we do as people are slowly leaving. So if you're still on, if you can unmute your mics for us. We never like to leave the space without closing it out, without giving thanks, without just participating in as much community spirit as we possibly can over a Zoom call. And so we just ended by me saying, and as always, and there's a little poll. I don't say it typically. Typically, it's our good Principal Holmes, but he can't be with us today. And so I need to make sure I do this for him. We say, and as always, and then there's a short pause, and all together we'll say, go T-Birds. So that's literally it.
Let's do it.
All right. So thank you, Mrs. Alyssa Milano, for everything that you shared with us today, for joining us. We will definitely stay in touch with you. Thank you for your community spirit, your activism, the joy that you bring, and for bringing all of that goodness to us. We really appreciate you.
It's been an honor.
And as always,
go T-Birds!
Go T-Birds! Thank you.
And congratulations on your Dodgers as well.
Yes. I think it ended, so we'll hang on up. Thank you, guys. Enjoy your weekends. Or